I'm here with Joe Rotella, who has brought a wonderful array of jewelry, which is woven and also wood, and it just sounds like so fun.
It actually really was. We made a bunch of these and had friends over, and everybody was stitching and sewing, and it did turn out fun. So how do we get started? I used my electronic sign cutter machine to create a vinyl stencil.
Okay.
And it's just a circle with the center cut out, and then I have an odd number of holes around the edge. I found an odd number worked better.
I was going to say, why does it have to be odd?
Well, because when you do a string art-like technique, odd works out better.
Okay.
Just works.
I'm going to believe you.
So then you take this after you've weeded it, and I just stuck it on a thin piece of wood. This is 1/8 of an inch Baltic
Especially because
birch.
you're using like earrings and jewelry, like you want it to be lightweight, I would assume, and not something super heavy. So you're not using a 2x4 here.
And this is just Baltic birch, but if you did some exotic woods, the colors are beautiful.
Cool.
Just beautiful. So now we're going to use the scroll saw to cut out that outer circle.
Okay, I'm going to put on my safety glasses.
Put on your safety glasses. This is just the right size for my tabletop. I mean, look, it's about 2 of my hands. And I've connected a vacuum hose to the back. It's just my normal vacuum so that it collects all that sawdust.
Great.
So let's go. So you can see how you'd work your way all the way around.
Yeah.
And if you need to stop, do like I do. Just veer off like the exit ramp, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense to me.
So if we made it all the way around, we'd have a piece that looked like that.
Okay, I can see. So it's just slowly making your way around, going off the exit ramp whenever you need to get out.
Break.
Okay.
Next, you would drill a pilot hole right in the center.
So a pilot hole, for anybody who doesn't know, is just because how would you get a blade into the inside?
Because once you have this hole, we can take the blade out, thread it through the hole, and now we can cut the inside out.
And that is how, of course, you end up with this one.
Exactly.
Okay, so I get it. We're going cut till we get to here. Then we get to the pilot hole, and finally we are left with our ring, which then we are ready to make some more holes.
Right, right. So I have a tiny drill press here. I mean, look at the size. It's about the size of one hand, and it's amazing how tiny the bits can be. So you'll want to check and make some pilot holes, test holes, in a scrap piece of wood to see what size needle will work through the holes.
Oh, of course, because if I go ahead and I grab one of these needles, I can see that you're going to want to compare the needle for the stitching that we're going to do to your needle size in order to pick it, and it looks like you have hit it perfectly with something that's right in the middle there.
Exactly. So this is a number 22 needle. So I'm going to start drilling some holes. Now the trick I learned, see that little pile of sawdust that it makes? If I was going like 1 puff, 2 puff, and then I decided this is crazy.
Okay.
Do every other hole.
Oh, because then the sawdust isn't in the way and you can clean it all at once.
Exactly. So now we can really kind of rock and roll all the way around this piece.
I can see that this actually goes very quickly, Joe.
Yeah, and in this case, this has about 31 holes, I think.
Okay.
So I'm just going to finish the last couple holes. And you can hear how smooth it is.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like you're encountering a lot of resistance or anything.
No.
Again, we're using a thin wood because it's jewelry, so super easy.
And you can open this up and change the torque.
Okay.
So depending on how hard you need to press, that's it. Now, I didn't drill the hole at the top because if I learned the hard way, if I do this last, sometimes I may want it to be a brooch. It doesn't need a hole or a magnet.
Oh, okay.
Right? And then you just peel off your stencil.
Can you reuse the stencil?
These are meant to be one-time use.
Okay.
It's almost no adhesive left.
Okay.
And that's what this particular vinyl is good for.
Okay.
So I have a bunch of these already cut. You can use them plain.
I was going to say, some of them, I'm going to switch places with you, but some of them look like they've already been colored.
Yeah, you can just stain them, you can paint them. Be careful with the paint that it doesn't clog all the tiny little holes.
I feel like that is the voice of experience speaking.
It actually is the voice of experience. So you're going to do one. Here you go.
Oh.
Now you have a choice.
Now, but here's my question, Joe. There's so many different ways to sew this. How do I choose? Or is there a right way? And do I start at the front? Do I start at the back?
If
Like,
there
what
was
do I do?
a right way, I don't know it.
Okay. So what you're saying is just go ahead and stitch.
I put something through about a yard, leave 2 or 3, 4 inches as a tail.
Okay.
Because you don't knot the end. You just weave it through later when it's all done.
Oh, okay.
And I used a piece of tape just to hold it in place.
Okay, clever. So you're just going to hold it in place with a piece of tape, and then
now the
where
two
are we
things.
going?
Well, one approach is you go straight across, all the way around, and you'll make spokes in a wheel.
Oh yeah, cool.
And then you weave around it. The other approach is like good old-fashioned string art.
Okay, you do the fancy way. I'll do the basic way. Wheels on.
Oh, so you're doing the spokes,
I'm
and
doing
the string art.
And you're doing the string art. And actually, didn't you say that you had a bunch of friends over and that you guys did this sort of sitting around together?
We did.
That sounds like a fun thing to do. I can totally see that for, you know, my friends love to craft, and it's an easy thing to get them to do. I've already gotten a tangled thread here.
No, I didn't expect that of you.
I know, but you know, one of the things with embroidery floss is if you kind of jam your needle in there, it pulls on out just like that.
But you can see this kind of goes pretty fast.
It does, and it's one of those things I can see that you could prep all these pieces for like a kid's birthday party or even, you know, an adult party where you could have a lot of people who just want to do the stitching part of it, and then they would walk away with some finished jewelry. This would be great for a class, actually.
And it's kind of mindless. Is it okay to say that?
Yeah, 100%. I love those crafts that you can do while you're watching TV, talking on the phone. You know what I mean? Also airplanes.
Well, and we had a lot of fun playing with fibers. And as an example, for this part where you're actually going through the holes, a thin fiber works great.
Like embroidery floss, which is what we're using right now. But you could also use a thin yarn, I assume.
But if you're going to weave all the way around, I would use something thick and fluffy.
You know, actually, a friend asked me, she's a knitter, and she said, I have a lot of tiny, you know, like a yard or two of leftover yarn from projects. Do you have any use for it? And I was like, what would I use? I mean, I feel like I never want to turn any free stuff down.
No,
but I was like,
because you're a craft hoarder.
Yeah, I'm a craft hoarder. But I was like, what am I actually practically going to do with that? But this seems like the perfect kind of project. Or if you've ever been to a yard sale where they're selling like bags of leftover, you know, fibers and stuff like that, like this is really the perfect craft for that kind of thing.
And when we first started, it was a little like, oh no, this is no fun. After we made one, everyone was like, do you have another one cut? Can I do another one? So I was cutting discs like frantically fast.
Well, I think it's the other thing, which is sometimes you just don't realize what it's going to be until you're close to done. And then when you start to see the possibilities, you know, I mean, this is where imagination comes in. When you look at something as simple as a piece of wood, what can you imagine it would be? I mean, it's kind of like sculpture. You have carved away from this wood, first the discs, and now by adding the color, the string, the texture, you're really making something brand new and totally exciting.
Now,
okay,
Joe,
Joe,
you done?
I have made it
done.
through.
I gave you a little one. I wasn't thinking.
You did. You gave me a
I
little one. I'm a cheater.
should have taken a little one.
I'm a super cheater. And it's not perfect, and that's totally fine, right?
But now you can take another fiber, and I'll give you a big puffy one.
Cool.
And over, under, over, under. Start from the center.
Okay, so over,
and work
under,
your way
over,
out.
under, over, under. Here we go. We'll start my way from the center. I feel like I should be able to do this. And I've noticed that we're using tapestry needles, which in case you can't see, this has a blunt end. It's not a sharp end. And that's important because you don't want to create new holes in the fiber that surrounds it.
I was thinking you don't want to create new holes in me.
I stab myself a lot when I sew, I'm not going to lie. I think it's just the nature of being a clumsy person.
You don't use a thimble?
You know, I have used a thimble, but I'm not really great at it. So now if we look for a second at some of the finished ones, you can see over on the right, we have the beaded one. And of course, there are some examples of weaving. Do you want to talk us through what we're looking at?
Sure. So up at the top, we made a beaded one that has a heart in the center. And then below that, that big signature piece, that's spokes like you've done, and then weaving, and we specifically used puffy, fluffy, sparkly yarn to add a little texture to it. Then we have some, I think here, is a string art piece.
Super cool, so different. I can see that the two earrings are different. There are so many possibilities for having fun with this, and I hope that you are gonna have some fun with it too.